Good evening. It is 5:30 PM on Tuesday, June 21st, 2022. And this regular meeting of Sandpoint Planning and Zoning Commission is now called to order in council chambers at City Hall, 1123 West Lake Street, Sandpoint, Idaho. Roll call for the record. I am Commissioner Mose Dunkel presiding. Also present are Commissioners Slate Camp, Luke Ahmet, Amelia Boyd, and Forrest Shook. Chairman Hastings and Commissioner McGran are absent. We will now recite the Pledge of Allegiance. If everyone will please stand. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Are there any other general announcements from the commissioners or from city staff? I hear none. And we'll move on to the next agenda item, which is approval of minutes, meeting minutes. I will entertain a motion to approve the minutes from June 7th, 2022's meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. The minutes are approved. Tonight we have item 6A, public hearing, final development plan and preliminary plat, city application number PPUD 21-0002. This item this evening is a public hearing on a request for a recommendation to City Council for approval of a final development plan and preliminary plat for Culver's Crossing subdivision at the northwest corner of North Boyer Avenue and Ebbett Way. The site is located in portions of blocks 1 and 2 of Culver's addition, section 15, township 57 north, range 2 west, Boise, Meridian, Bonner County, Idaho. A notice of public hearing was published in the Bonner County Daily Bee, the city's newspaper of record, on May 31st, 2022. The order and procedure for both public hearings this evening will be as follows. Explanation of subject of the public hearing by city staff, presentation by applicant. Please note that commissioners should address their questions to the applicant at that time. Opening of the public hearing, at which time the public may provide testimony. Questions should be asked of those testifying at that time. The order in those providing testimony will be as follows: in favor, neutral, and opposed. Applicant's rebuttal testimony, at which time final questions may be asked of the applicant. Please note that if new facts are elicited during rebuttal, the public will be given an opportunity to comment on any new facts. Then the public hearing will be closed and the commission will deliberate. No new information may be provided after the hearing has been closed. With questions directed only to city staff during deliberation. Before I proceed any further, I would like to ask for confirmation from each commissioner, please, that you have had no ex parte contact and have no conflict of interest as pertains to this request.
Mr. Vice Chair, I'm going to recuse myself from this item. I'll be back for the next one.
Noted.
None for me.
None.
And none for myself. I will now yield the floor to City Planner Amy Tweeden for the introduction of this request and explanation of the application.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Again, this is a public hearing on cases PPUD 21002 and PS 22003, the Culvers Crossing Final Development Plan and Preliminary Plat. The Culvers Crossing Final Development Plan and Preliminary Plat include a 47 lot development of 49 dwelling units at the northwest corner of North Boyer Avenue and Epic Way. The preliminary development plan was conditionally approved by the commission on April 5th, 2022. The final development plan and preliminary plat are in substantial conformance with the preliminary development plan. Action by the commission on a preliminary plat and final development plan are recommendations. Also, a staff report was sent out on Friday, June 17th and amended today, June 21st. The amended report was sent to the commission and posted on the website. And I will note there is one more change to the conditions of approval, specifically number 17, that I will provide more detail as we get there. The commission's approval in principle of the preliminary development plan included 8 conditions. Those are mostly met with the final development plan. There are a couple that have corresponding conditions of approval with the final development plan. That is the sidewalk along Culvers Drive and the parking less than 10 feet from the setback. The final development plan provides 49 dwellings in a mix of single family attached, which are the townhouse lots, single family detached, which are single family lots, and one multifamily structure of 3 units, which is the historic house that also has a carriage house or accessory dwelling unit. The proposed structure elevations, floor plans, and construction standards were included in the PUD submittal request. All of the dwellings are accessed from Irvine Way that connects Culvers Drive and Ebbett Way, and as well as by 20-foot purely local drives that will be publicly dedicated but privately maintained. The common open space totals 12.4% of the overall development, including the community park at the northeast corner. The development, this is the development phasing plan. It's anticipated to be completed in 4 phases or approximately 5 years. Appendix A provides the proposed zoning standards. The exterior setbacks, building heights, and overall lot coverage are consistent with the RS requirements, while the townhouse lot area and width are smaller but allowed by the PUD. Again, this is also approval or a hearing on the preliminary plat and the preliminary plat with the noted conditions is able to meet the standards of Sandpoint City Code 1016. The traffic impact study did not identify additional needed on or off-site improvements to the road network based on the traffic generated from the subdivision. The conditions added to address the private maintenance of the purely local drives and access restriction from Irvine Way. And should the preliminary plat be approved, a public infrastructure permit process would follow to ensure all infrastructure is built to city standards. Pursuant to City Code Section 10.3.10, in making its recommendation to the City Council, the Commission shall find that the facts submitted with the final development plan application establish the following: that the proposed development can be initiated within 2 years of the date of approval, that each individual unit of the development as well as the total development can exist as an independent unit capable of creating an environment of sustained desirability and stability, or that adequate assurance will be provided that such objective will be attained. The uses proposed will not be detrimental to present and potential surrounding uses, but will have a beneficial effect which would not be achieved under standard zoning regulations. The streets and thoroughfares proposed are suitable and adequate to carry anticipated multimodal traffic. The increased densities will not generate vehicular traffic in such amounts as to overload the street network outside the PUD, and that any impacts have been adequately mitigated. Any exception from standard zoning requirements is warranted by the design and other amenities incorporated into the final development plan in accordance with this chapter and the adopted policy of City Council. The PUD is in general conformance with the comprehensive plan, and that the existing and proposed utility services are adequate for the population densities and non-residential uses proposed. Based on staff's review of the final development plan and preliminary plat, the following conditions should be included in any motions to recommend approval to City Council. A PUD agreement with these conditions will also be provided for consideration by City Council when reviewing the final development plan and preliminary plat. The highlighted conditions were included in the amended staff report sent this morning. The commission may add additional conditions that it believes are necessary to meet the requirements of section 10.3.10. So the first condition is a change from the original staff report. And the condition is that all structures on townhouse lots are considered single-family attached dwellings, the big house and twin houses. The historic house is a 3-unit structure, which is permitted in the RS district through a PUD and has an accessory dwelling identified as the carriage house. The open spaces shall be provided in accordance with the application, not less than 12.4% of the total gross area, privately maintained and fully functional. The final plat shall provide reference to the open space and responsibility of maintenance and city-approved CC&Rs incorporating detailed maintenance standards and provisions. The final stormwater management plan shall be developed in a manner that does not negatively affect the functionality of the open spaces. Appendix A, zoning standards, provides the allowed standards for building permit review. Other city codes in place at the time of building permit application shall apply. Modifications to the standards provided by Appendix A may only be approved by way of an amended PUD. Number 5, on-street parking. Parking on one side of the street shall be permitted where the pavement width is 28 feet or more, and parking on both sides of the street shall be permitted where the pavement width is 36 feet or more. No parking signs shall be provided wherever these conditions are not met. The carriage house, an accessory dwelling unit to the historic house, is limited to a single dwelling unit. The purely local drive shall be privately maintained. The final plat shall provide references to the responsibility of maintenance and city-approved CC&Rs incorporating detailed maintenance standards and provisions. There will be a no left turn sign provided at the intersection of Irvine Way and Ebbett Way. All existing drive approaches to North Boyer Avenue shall be removed and curb installed. The plat shall provide a note prohibiting any access off North Boyer Avenue applicable to lots 16 through 26. And finally, no lots may be sold and no building permits issued prior to final platting. I say final, but that's not the final one. 11. The CC&R shall provide that the homeowners association will determine the specific use of the open spaces within 2 years of the completion of phase 1. So sidewalks shall be provided along both sides of Irvine Drive. No sidewalks are required along the purely local drives. A 20-foot wide landscape buffer shall be provided between North Boyer Avenue curb and the adjacent property boundaries. A 5-foot wide sidewalk shall be provided within this buffer. The developer shall pay a fee in lieu of construction of a sidewalk along Culver's Drive. Lots 5, 10, 11, and 46 shall provide a landscape screen within the 6-foot setback. In accordance with City Code 10.3.10.1, the development shall be initiated within 2 years of the date of approval. The infrastructure construction and recording of the final plat shall occur within 2 years from the date of approval. The building construction and final certificates of occupancy shall occur in phases and completed within 5 years from the date of PUD approval, as further described and conditioned in the development agreement. And 17, this is the condition that has been further revised. The driveway edges for block 2 are less than 35 feet from the pavement edge of Irvine Way per section 10(1)(6)(f). The deviation is approved through the PUD. After receiving public comment and deliberation, the commission may recommend to City Council that the Culvers Crossing final development plan and preliminary plat be approved with conditions, or denied. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. With that, excuse me, with that, I will now yield the floor to the applicant's presentation. If the applicant's representative will please step to the podium and introduce yourself.
Excuse me, I'm just trying to get this to start. And there we go. Why it's not starting. Okay. Oh. Go. I'm sorry, sir. I'll be right with you. I don't know what's happening here.
Take your
I'm
time.
going to try starting this again. I will have to just use the screen that you have in front of you the best I can and go forward. My mouse is not cooperating. I'll do the best I can. Good afternoon, members of the Planning and Zoning Commission. My name is Rob Hart. I'm the Executive Director of the Honor Community Housing Agency. And it's good to see you again. Over the past 2 months, our team has been working with your staff to try to make Culvers Crossing a better project. And tonight, with their guidance, we come before you with a better plan. I'm not sure. Oh, there we go. Is there a way that you can run a PowerPoint off of this?
Just take 1 second.
Excuse me.
No problem.
Okay.
No,
Yep. And then you use your
made it further than I would have.
Culvers Crossing version 4.0.
Well, let me just get one.
There we go. So with their guidance, we come to you tonight with a better plan. Click. The final PUD and preliminary plat before you may look the same, but there are some subtle improvements that I'd like to describe. Each of them is the result of us satisfying the conditions of approval that you applied to your preliminary approval of our PUD. To satisfy condition 1, traffic impact analysis was prepared by David Evans Associates, and here is their conclusion. Quote, "The Culvers Crossing development is anticipated to create minimal traffic impacts on the surrounding roadway network, given existing intersection configurations. Based on the technical analysis and mitigation recommendations presented herein, sufficient capacity will be available to accommodate the Culvers Crossing development," unquote. Click. All those mitigations and recommendations are included in the final development plan that is before you tonight. In condition 2, staff recommended that we connect and consolidate and make more usable open space at Culvers Crossing. Click. The final development plan now shows 9,500 square foot community park connected to a 20-foot wide open space easement that extends the full length of North Boyer down to Ebbett Way and then curves around to the west, extending to the new intersection of Irvine Drive. We have imposed upon ourselves 2 important restrictions for this greenbelt. One is that no solid or 6-foot high fences are allowed, and no cross fencing is allowed. The other is that no tree removal is allowed without approval of the HOA and an arborist. The Culvers Crossing HOA may build a fence along North Boyer, and if they do, it must be an open rail fence not exceeding 42 inches in height, and there must be a gate opening onto North Boyer. All these are contained in our CCNRs. This subtle improvement does not affect property boundaries, but it will make the drive on North Boyer past the project much more pleasant. The 4th condition was about a 7-foot greenbelt on the western edge, and this has been removed and incorporated into the primary greenbelt along North Boyer, making open space more effective. Condition 5, well, that was our favorite, and I appreciate the commissioner's attempts to follow our, oh, I didn't want to click. Let's go back. I appreciate the commissioner's attempts to follow our suggestion of leaving the open space undisturbed. But the final development plan now shows a sidewalk along the full length of North Boyer, fronting Culvers Crossing. Condition 6 requested a table of development standards. The city now has this table, which is a list of the deviations to RS zoning that the PUD format allows and that Culvers Crossing is requesting. This may look like a lot of information, but this table also shows all of the lots that are not asking for deviations, which is the case for many of them. In fact, many of our lots exceed RS zoning requirements. To satisfy condition 7, we have added driveway setbacks to the deviation table. And as mitigation for that deviation, we are adding landscape screening alongside the driveways that are adjacent to property lines. And finally, condition 8 asked for a narrative addressing the conditional use permit criteria, and this has now been submitted. Click. In addition to conditions of approval, the city asked for some additional plans, and those are now in your files. Here's an image of the proposed historic home, which will be the first building that you see as you approach the project from the south. This home is on its own half-acre lot and is set back 30 to 40 feet from the street. As I said in my opening remarks, over the past 2 months, our team has worked with the city and the conditions of approval to bring you a better project tonight. This morning, we received a staff report with 17 new conditions of approval. We appreciate that staff has worked diligently with us over the last 24 hours to fine-tune this report, especially given that yesterday was a holiday. But the fact remains that we've had little time to review these new last-minute conditions of approval with our team. The new conditions are in 2 categories: required conditions and suggested conditions. Under the required conditions, you might find that new condition 4 could lead to the removal of some trees we'd hoped to save. Under the suggested conditions, our first response is none of them are required. Please know that every condition you add will usually reduce our ability to provide affordable housing. Requiring the sidewalk along North Boyer was a good example of that. That requirement converted at least one affordable home to a market rate home. So we would ask that none of the suggested conditions be adopted. Click. But if you find that you must consider these suggested conditions, here are our initial comments, given that we just got these today. New condition 11 is already covered in the CCNRs. We would like to wait until all homeowners are present to make a decision, not just the first 15. New conditions 12 and 13 already show on the final development plan that we submitted in May. I would like to note that new condition 13 uses the word boundaries, and we want to make clear that easements do not affect property lines. New condition 14 is already covered because Nancy is reducing the prices of some of the homes by as much as $100,000 below market rate as a contribution to the community. New condition 15, you can include if you want, but we've already agreed to it. And new condition 16 is already contained in city code. Thus, it is not necessary as a new condition. These are just some of the initial things we noticed. And Lisa is going to speak about this in the whole process in just a minute. And so I would like to ask the P&Z Commission to approve the project without the suggested conditions. Culver's Crossing is already facing the headwinds of a doubling of interest rates and inflation that we have not seen in 40 years. Please recognize that Nancy and the team have worked with you in good faith for over a year. At the same time, the city has been responsive to our concerns. We greatly appreciate that and hope that that spirit of cooperation will continue. Also, please recognize that this is the first privately funded affordable housing project in North Idaho. And so it will take continuing cooperation by all parties for it to be successful. Click. Before I go, I'd like to thank Scott, Nicole, and Russell of Sewell Engineering, Matt and Dante of Selkirk Design, Marty of AJ Construction, Jake of Sonray Enterprises, and especially Lisa of Sandpoint Law Group, all of whom get us back here tonight. But most of all, once again, I'd like to thank Nancy Hadley, because without her care for the community, you would not be reviewing this first of its kind affordable housing project in Sandpoint. And now I'd like to turn our presentation over to our attorney, Lisa Moline. Click. Thank you.
Good evening, commissioners. My name is Lisa Moline. I'm an attorney with Sandpoint Law here in town, and I represent Ms. Hadley. And I put these suggested conditions of approval modifications up there because sometimes I'm a visual person. I like to see it. So, and I'll try to make my comments brief. Give an attorney a microphone and we talk forever. So number 11. I think that, you know, the city is asking for 2 years. The reason we're requesting that this commission extend that to 5 years is because this a project is so complex, and to pin down what the city park or the open space is going to be with only a very small portion of the property sold within the first 2 years, pigeonholes the remainder of the development into this, whatever that park's going to be. So we request that it be the 5 years based on the development agreement and the complete build out of the process itself. And also it aligns with our CCNRs. It also aligns with what Ms. Hadley has represented to the city already, which is it's going to be an open space. There's going to be picnic tables added there by the developer. So it's already going to have a useful purpose until it's completely developed. And we don't want to hamstring our HOA into creating creating an HOA in advance of actually having the project built. So we're requesting that to be moved from 2 years to 5. We are asking no deviations for number 12. We have sidewalks on both sides of Irvine Drive, Irvine Way, whatever, the North Irvine Drive. So that's fine. You know, I want to talk about number 13. Probably the most. The 20-foot wide landscape buffer is an easement. It is not a dedicated common area. It's an easement for open space. There's a difference in there. It's not by boundary to boundary. It's going to encroach onto all of those backyards of the people who abut North Boyer Drive. But what it's going to do is restrict the use. So the CCNRs are very specific about that. And so it's restricting the use. So if you're going to force us to put that boundary line for those properties that are abutting North Boyer Drive at the 20-foot wide, then it curtails the building envelope and the square footage of those actual lots. So it's what I'm asking is that you amend number 13 to show a 20-foot wide landscape buffer easement shall be provided from the North Boyer Avenue curb, but eliminate the other point on that, saying that it needs to go all the way to the property line. The property line will be somewhere in that 20-foot wide easement. There's no permanent structures allowed inside an easement area according to Idaho law. Nobody can build a shed in there, and the CCNRs curtail that restriction. So I just want to make sure that maybe that's something that this commission can consider at this point. Of course, we don't want to pay any fees in lieu of construction on the sidewalk. I did drive by Culver's Drive today on my way here, and there's a giant stormwater drainage system that exists on that side of the project. It's existing there to funnel water away from the area. So even if we had the ability to put a sidewalk in there, we would be damaging any existing stormwater management that's already on Culver's Drive. We have no issue with number 15 or number 16. And of course, I think I asked for number 17 to be eliminated, but we worked with the city this afternoon. And so I think that the new number 17 is acceptable. It just allows us to have those driveways within the 35-foot setback. I know I gave you a lot of information. Is there any questions you all have for me?
So 11, 12, 13, 14,
11, 12,
13.
13, 14.
11, 13, and 14, correct.
Thank you. Do commissioners have any questions for the applicant before we proceed?
Thank you, commissioners, and I really appreciate the city's wonderful help with us in the last 24 hours. So thank you all. I appreciate it.
Thank you. If there's no additional questions, we'll now recite the public hearing rules and procedure. Please note that as provided in the public notice hearing and as stated within the meeting packet posted on the city website, all written comments are to be delivered to the city clerk. Those comments that were received by way of that stated procedure were either included in the meeting packet or, if received in time prior to the meeting, were forwarded to the commissioners. This process must be followed to ensure comments are properly included in the permanent hearing record. I would like to ask for your attention at this time, please, as I recite the standards for public testimony during this evening's public hearing. Number 1, testimony shall be directly addressed. Sorry, excuse me, let me reread that. Testimony shall directly address the subject at hand. 2, testimony shall not be personally derogatory toward any individual, organization, or business. 3, public comment opportunities are for comment only. Do not direct any questions to the commission or staff. 4, in the interest of time, testimony shall not be repetitious, and each speaker is allotted no more than 3 minutes. If your testimony fails to comply with these standards, it may be declared out of order and you will be asked to cease. Those here in the chambers who wish to speak will need to complete a sign-up form and hand it to the clerk. Do not approach the dais. The forms are available on the table by the door. Those on Zoom will have an opportunity to speak too. Those in attendance are not to disrupt this meeting or the business at hand that is being taken up by the commission. Disruptive behavior includes clapping, disruptive noise, and comments or exclamations from the audience. We will now prepare to proceed with the public hearing. For those that are participating on Zoom, when your name is called, you will see a prompt on your screen asking whether you would like to unmute. Then you will need to unmute yourself in order to be heard. The clerk will now lower all hands on Zoom in order to take testimony in the order previously stated. If you wish to speak in favor or neutral or in opposition, I will make a call for each, then you may raise your hand at that time. Just a reminder, in the interest of time, please do not repeat prior comments made by others, but simply state your support for those comments. Each speaker will be allowed up to 3 minutes. The public hearing is now open. Will those who are participating remotely, if you are participating on Zoom, wish to testify in favor of this request, please raise your hand at this time.
Mr. Vice Chair, there are no participants on Zoom that wish to testify in favor.
Thank you. We'll now recognize those in the room who wish to testify in favor. Madam Clerk, will you please call the first speaker to the podium?
Mr. Vice Chair, there are 8 participants that are present in the room, none of which to speak at this time, but all are in support of the project.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else on Zoom or here in the room who wishes to speak in favor?
No participants on Zoom.
No, and we will now move to those who are neutral to this proposal. If you are participating on Zoom and wish to testify in neutral, please raise your hand.
Mr. Vice Chairman, there are no participants on Zoom who would wish to testify as neutral.
Thank you. We'll now recognize those in the room who wish to testify as neutral. Madam Clerk, are there anyone here in the chambers who wish to testify as neutral?
There is no one present in the room that would like to testify as neutral.
So to recap, nobody on Zoom and nobody in the room who would like to testify as neutral.
No, Mr. Vice Chair.
Do we have to read that? It's on here. Finally, we'll hear from those who are opposed to this request. If you are participating on Zoom and wish to testify as opposed, please raise your hand.
There is no one on Zoom that is raising their hand to testify as opposed.
Thank you. We will now recognize those in the room who wish to testify in opposition. Madam Clerk, is there anyone in the chambers who wishes to testify as opposed?
Mr. Vice Chair, there is no one in chambers who would like to testify as opposed.
Okay, hearing nobody that wants to testify in opposition. Do any commissioners have any additional questions at this time?
Is this when I get to ask staff questions?
After we close the public hearing, we'll ask staff questions.
I do have one question I meant to ask earlier. I apologize. So you guys are happy with conditions 1 through 10? Is that correct? It's just the suggested conditions that those 3 that you had problems with. I just wanted to make sure, had that clarified. That was it.
Would the applicant care to offer any rebuttal to that?
Thank you, Chairman. I'm here to answer any questions that you have, and I'd like to address the question from Commissioner Boyd, we've had very little time to look at this. We have not been able to meet with our designers and civil engineers and all that to say, what is your input on these conditions of approval? Because we just got them this morning. So I think the answer to your question is we've done the best that we can. We're going to try to be okay with the conditions that have come with it to us at the last minute. The reason I did mention condition number 4 in my remarks was that if we have to move a house an inch or two to save a tree, the notice of approval would say that we'd have to come back here, which might be a loss of time of a month or two to move a house an inch or two. So we had asked that that be at the discretion of the Development Services Director, as opposed to just a mandatory review, and we were told that we were not allowed to do that. We'll see how that goes. There always are changes that happen in the field and construction. It's just the nature of the business. And so we're just going to do our best to fit within the requirements of Appendix A. And if some changes come up to try to save a tree, we'll address those at the time that they come up. Happy to answer any other questions you have.
I have a question. What would be a reasonable amount of time that your team would need to review the requested changes?
Well, what's more important to us is maintaining momentum. And normally you would get a staff report, let's say a few days or a week before the public hearing, and you would, we block out that time before this hearing to have everybody around so that we can have those meetings. That didn't happen this time, but it's more important for us to make it through this hearing and get to City Council and get started so that we can start this summer, rather than say, well, let's take a delay and give them time and really get it all, so that everybody's 100% happy. I think Lisa has very clearly explained what we can do within the limited time we have, but our hope is to move forward with approval tonight, and we will try our best to live with the conditions that you see fit to apply to this project.
So you don't feel like it's a great risk that you're taking?
Real estate development right now is a risk. I think it's important to note that Nancy Hadley doesn't have a bunch of investors backing her. She's done all this design, all this engineering, all these approvals with her own money, and she is taking a very big risk. And we're all doing our best to try to work with the city in a cooperative way. But we already have a public hearing date set for City Council on July 6th. It's when we heard that that was set, we then talked to our contractors and all the other people and try to line everything up, because it takes many weeks to do the logistics and the mobilization. So for us right now, the most important thing really is momentum. Yes, there's a risk. There's a risk we might lose a tree or something, but we don't know that yet because we haven't started. But we were trying to set up the conditions so that they had a little bit of flexibility in them, but we understand there's laws and we have to follow the laws, and we don't want to be sort of singled out and saying that we're trying to ask for some special consideration. We're trying to have the project judged on its merits.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other
So
questions?
one last question. So you have your CCNRs and maintenance plan that's already,
Oh, yes, very detailed. And Lisa did it. She's really good. Yeah, and all the things I said, the issue about the 42-inch open rail fence, that's in the CCNRs. The matter that you cannot cross fence the open space easement, that's in the CCNRs. So that's the thing we were trying to explain about this green belt, is it will have the effect of moving the property boundary back, but it's still just an easement. There's people who buy those lots, they're being notified that they can't do anything out there, but it's protective because we have lots that are double frontage. And when you run into lots that are double frontage, as you've seen in the University of Idaho property, you get these really tiny backyard lots that front right onto a city street. Well, we're saying we can do better than that. we can create this buffer between the street and the private backyard that will make the home, we think, more appealing and the drive along Boyer more appealing.
Do you know if the inside of the 20-foot wide easement, if you recognize that as a boundary or property line, does it make that a non-conforming lot?
It does not, because the lots on that side are large. Some of them are in a 5,000 square foot requirement. Some of them are 7,000 square feet. But what happens is where you have the duplex lots, then those get smaller. And this whole project has been designed around that being an easement. It showed, the Greenbelt has shown for quite a long time. And to all of a sudden say, well, now all those lots are smaller, then what happens is the setback begins from there. We still are set back 15 feet from that easement to the home. So we still have the required setback, but if you move that back, then it just starts squeezing everything. We're doing this to protect trees. We want to control that green belt because there's a lot of really nice trees there. And so what we're really doing is restricting the homeowners from tearing down the trees and saying you can't put a fence up there and make it look like what might happen across the street. So we're trying maybe some creative planning. We're trying something that maybe hasn't been done in Sandpoint before, but neither has a project like this. So we're hoping that the Planning and Zoning Commission will recognize that there is some creative planning that we're trying to do here and maybe say, hey, this is something that, you know, might happen in other places too. It certainly is common in other communities. I've done these kind of green belts before to great effect.
The Sandpoint City Tree Committee weigh in on this?
I have not heard from them. No,
I
but we,
don't know if they have jurisdiction over trees on actual lots, but just a question.
we did hire a forester to inventory all the trees, including the health of the trees. And then we walked around, and if you go out to that property today, you'll see a lot of red tags. We've cleared up some brush away so we can see the trees better. And you'll see, I would encourage anybody to go out there and take a look at how many trees that we're going to be trying to save. It's just, it's really unprecedented in the city.
Thank you. That's all I have for now.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Hearing no final questions from the commissioners. Last chance. Public hearing is now closed. No new information may be provided and questions may be directed only to city staff during deliberation. Do commissioners have any questions at this time for staff?
Yes, I do.
Go ahead.
To begin with the modified conditions of approval that the applicant brought forward, Ms. Tweedon, could you provide, starting with number 11, staff's thoughts or in changing from, and I'll be following this by number 13, followed by 14 with my questions, but number 11 to go from modifying it from 2 to 5 years. What is the staff's guidance and thoughts in regards to code and ordinance, as this is a condition, a suggested condition of approval?
Again, I think the intent of the condition is that the park not necessarily be the very last thing that happened with the development. So that's where the 2 years came from. I guess I can't say I have an opinion on 5 years.
Okay, thank you. In regards to number 13, could you provide clarification from staff's position in what is the difference between, as written, a 20-foot wide landscape buffer shall be provided versus a 20-foot wide landscape buffer easement shall be provided?
Again, the explanation of the applicant was that there's easements on all of these properties that are this buffer. We don't know who that easement is to per se. What this is trying to get at is that potentially the sidewalk wouldn't have to be just up against the curb in the right of way. It could conceivably meander into the green space if that makes for a better development. But the difference between the buffer and buffer easement, again, that's what they are calling it. On the, I don't believe on the actual preliminary plat, it shows up as an easement, but I can look at, it might show that way on the plat.
So we discern no major negligible harm to the city by adding the word easement.
We don't know what the intent is because this is the first time we've seen the word easement. Who's the easement granted to? Who's maintaining the easement? Is it granted to the HOA? Are they trying to grant it to? We're just not sure what the intent of using the legal term easement is. So that would be the answer.
If I could piggyback on that. So what is the city code for the easement, for an easement? Is there a city code for easement at the length or the width of?
No, that's just their open space, but you'll see on the preliminary plat here, they are calling out a 20-foot
Oh, I see it.
easement.
Easement,
There's open space
and storm drain.
and storm drainage easement. That's that 20 feet.
So the correct terminology would be buffer.
Yes. That's what the condition is asking for. I don't know that there's a correct or incorrect. There just hasn't been a significant conversation about what their thinking is with regards to an easement. It was presented tonight. And on that note, as a point of clarification, and for the record, I would like to advise the commission that the report was sent on Friday afternoon, and legal counsel, Ms. Moline, contacted me yesterday with regards to some concerns they had with the staff report, and our staff worked on a holiday working through a number of those concerns to revise and clarify some of these conditions. So it was a bit of a misstatement to say they were just received today.
Would this buffer be considered a right of way, like public right of way, or is this? What is the right of way in this location presently? Like, is there any public right of way?
All right, I'll bring up the plan again.
I guess that was. my
So the
question.
public right of way is where these pins are. That's the edge of the property. They're showing the lots, and then they're showing the 20-foot open space and storm drainage easement. So as part of the plat, they are putting the easement now in the notes. I don't believe it identifies who on the notes to the plat. It does not identify to whom that easement is granted.
Possibly the HOA.
Possibly.
So according to that, the public easement or public, excuse me, right of way is 30 feet from the center line of North Boyer. And then the 20-foot area in question is on top of that 30 feet from the center line. So it's not in the public right of way. This is further than the public right of way.
Correct. It's on private property.
But the sidewalk is proposed to be somewhere inside of that 20-foot area.
Currently, they're showing the sidewalk in the Boyer right of way.
And remember, there's going to be a detailed development agreement between now and the time that this goes to council, should you make a recommendation for approval. So you could modify suggested condition of approval number 13 to simply reflect a 20-foot wide landscape buffer as negotiated in the, as to be negotiated in the development agreement. You could make it as simple as that. It's not your final decision to make. So you could leave the buffer. There could still be opportunity for negotiation between now and council.
Okay. For me, to clarify, the sidewalk is being shown as being inside of the public right of way, not in the 20-foot buffer, but I think right here it says that it's in the buffer.
Yeah, that's what it says. in
It says
13.
5-foot wide sidewalk shall be provided within the buffer. So not in the public right of way.
Again, you can just leave it to be negotiated
Okay.
between now and council in a development agreement.
Seems like sidewalk's pretty far off the street, which, I mean, sounds cool, but I don't know if that's what anybody wants. Any more questions?
Luke, did you want to continue?
Move on to 14.
Well, that one seems pretty simple to me, so I don't need a question on that. Nope.
I have a question about 14. So, I mean, from what I understand, when a development goes in, they are responsible for putting in sidewalks. For instance, that's why the North Boyer sidewalk had to be in this plat because it's code. So with the sidewalk along Culver's Drive, so if they were to pay a fee in lieu of that, does that mean the city will put in the sidewalk? Or what is that all about?
That the option of paying fee in lieu of is that the city can use the money to potentially build a sidewalk somewhere that it makes more sense at the time. Not necessarily on Culver's Drive, because they have raised the issues of the current cross-section of Culver's Drive with ditches.
Okay, so if a sidewalk is not found or a place for the sidewalk, then, so I'm just trying to figure out with these fees, if there isn't one, because it seems like it's a very limited space for where a sidewalk would go that would affect this development. What would happen with these fees if there isn't a sidewalk that is put into place?
The fees are used to build sidewalks throughout the city.
Okay, so it wouldn't be specifically for this development.
Correct.
Okay.
And from a legal perspective, with regards to the request to strike it entirely, Sandpoint City Code 10-3-1, which is your PUD code, specifically states it's intended to waive or modify, to allow waiver and modification of land use regulations. The sidewalk code is found in Title 7, which is not a land use regulation.
Thank you. Oh, I do have another question. Sorry. It wasn't discussed yet. So they proposed that island and then I saw that the city or us, you prefer a no left turn sign instead of the island right there at Ebbett Way.
Right.
Why is that? Or is that because of snow removal or
It's
maintenance?
primarily maintenance and having winter maintenance primarily and just maneuvering around
An
the
island?
island. So the recommended conditional approval is removing the island and just putting up the no left turn sign.
Okay. Then. I'm sure I'll find my other questions.
If I may, Ms. Jovic, to go back to your statement that in regards to 14, what's the material piece of That being chapter 7 versus chapter 10.
Title 7 is not a zoning or a subdivision code, and PUDs are designed to allow waivers and modifications from zoning code. Title 7 is not a zoning code. So the sidewalk code section is either build the sidewalk or pay the fee in lieu of. That's not found in your zoning code, which is where your PUDs get some grace in modifications and waivers.
So if we were to attempt to do that, would we be in violation of city code then? Thank you.
Either or.
Yes, it's sidewalk or fee in lieu of.
That.
And number 11 is there any, as far as a legal standpoint, is there a difference between the 2 and the 5 years, or 2 and 3 or 4 years?
I think Ms. Tweeten did a great job of explaining the intent of a suggested condition related to the time frame is so that the park or that green space isn't established last. So but you have discretion.
So to clarify phase 1, can we look at phase 1?
Phase 1 is in blue.
So how many units or dwellings are within phase 1?
So we have 3, 7, 11, 15, 16, 17,
18, 19, 20. Right? A single.
19, 20. 2 single-family lots at the south end, a single-family lot next to the park, a 2-unit townhouse, 2 4-unit townhouses, 3 4-unit townhouses, and a 3-unit townhouse.
May I ask, Ms. Jovic, if I'm looking at number 13, so that if I was to make a motion, I could say it mostly correct on my attempted first try?
Always your goal.
I'm full of goals. So if I was to say a 20-foot wide landscaped buffer, would I put to be negotiated in the final development agreement, whether it's landscape buffer easement, where do I insert within the proposed approval to be certain that it's to be negotiated in the development agreement? And would that language also provide the applicant additional opportunities, I assume, to make other negotiations, because we are a merely advisory committee when they, so that's a significant piece of this.
No
entire-
substantial changes, of course, from what you recommend to council, but this is a piece where I feel very safe in saying that you could simply amend number 13 to be a 20-foot wide landscaped buffer to be negotiated in the final development agreement. Details to be negotiated in the final development agreement.
Thank you. Safety's good.
Personally, I'm in favor of more like a 3-year period in number 11. I feel like 5 is a long time because let's say hypothetically half of the dwellings were completed in 3 years. And there was still 2 years left for that condition. But I mean, I understand the opposition to it because, you know, we're potentially going into a very interesting time in our economy. And I don't think anybody knows exactly what's going to happen in the next 2 or 3 or 5 years. So, but I do feel like it is important to have some motivation to complete that part of it, since to me, that is one of the parts that's an important part, I think. So that's my stance on number 11. I think number 13 also to be negotiated makes sense. And I think 14 is good to remain in there as well.
Mr. Vice Chairman, what if you were to just change number 11 to phase 2 upon completion of phase 2?
Or beginning of phase 2,
I like completion. It's a lovely word.
completion of phase 2.
Yes, Mr.
Is
Vice
there-
Chairman.
I'm in agreement with you, Mose. I think if we put a time limit on it, you know, as opposed to it open-ended, or 2 maybe too constricting, 5 I think is too long, because I mean, it is important to have that space available for families and such.
Affordability matters. At some point, we're going to have to be looking at what opportunities we have and be basing it upon faith. We've had a lot of good faith so far. By putting additional expense at the early stage, depending upon it, that has potential negative impacts upon or citizens being able to get into homes. And that's the end state. So if we're doing workforce housing, affordable housing, whatever term we are seeking, ultimately in the end, it comes down to homes. And the more expense we had earlier in the project is more people that are not getting into a house.
But if you remember from the last hearing, it's not all going to be affordable housing. There's going to be houses and whatnot at market price as well. So you have to think that not all 20 of those lots are going to be affordable housing, because it doesn't, you know, economically, they're going to have market value. And so with that income, it could, you know, pay for that green park open space.
And make sure you're reading the details of number
Mhm.
11.
Yeah.
It says the CC&R shall provide that the HOA will determine the specific use of the open space within whatever time period you decide after the completion of phase 1. So it
Pretty
doesn't say it has to be
broad.
built out. It's a determination.
And it's
Thank you, Mr.
also,
Jovic.
also within 2 years of the completion of phase 1, which could be 4 years.
4 years.
And most PUD applications require that the open space designation be articulated at the time of application. So there's a lot of grace being given with this time frame, but of course you have the discretion to extend it a little more if you'd like.
I mean, now reading that with just to determine the specific use, it's not really
Within.
any monetary commitment, is it?
Mhm.
If the HOA spends a long time deliberating like we do, then, you know, it could cost a lot, but I don't know, kind of maybe going back to the 2 years is fine.
Thank you, Fonda, for that. That within changes everything.
And determine.
Yes.
So I think we're ready for a motion.
Slate
Any questions?
pondering over there.
Well, at any time during the hearing, did I miss what the ratio was of marketplace versus affordable?
It was in the last hearing. I don't think it was discussed tonight.
Okay.
I think if I remember correctly, 40% of,
The hearing's
oh,
closed.
that's right.
Yeah. we
That's
have
right.
to reopen.
No, I have my notes. I can't recall specifically. That sounds about right. I'm ready to make a motion. If,
Go ahead.
okay. I move the Planning and Zoning Commission, after consideration of the criteria and relevant standards of Idaho Code and Sandpoint City Code, recommend the Sandpoint City Council approve the request by Nancy A. Hadley and James R. Aiken for the Culvers Crossing Final Development Plan and Preliminary Plat on parcels RPS 00820010004 AA, RPS 00820020001 AA, RPS 008200201 and RPS 00820020009 located at the northwest corner of North Boyer Avenue and Ebbett Way, subject to the following conditions to be incorporated into a development agreement. The required conditions of approval are what was stated in the 1 through 10 of the required conditions from staff report. And then the suggested conditions of approval 11 through 17, with 11 actually remaining the same, but 13 amended to a 20-foot wide landscape details to be negotiated in the final development agreement. Whereas 14 through 17 remain the same. Did I do that correctly?
Just to clarify, that number 17, if you could just read
Okay.
what's highlighted in green, because that is different than what was in the report.
And with 17, the driveway edges for block 2 are less than 35 feet from the pavement edge of Irving Way per Sandpoint City Code 10-1-6-F. The deviation is approved through the PUD.
This is based on the findings in the staff report and the information presented this evening.
Yes, this motion is based on the findings provided through the submittal materials, staff report, and testimony.
Been moved,
Second.
been moved and seconded. This will be a roll call vote. Commissioner Boyd,
Aye.
Commissioner Camp,
Aye.
Commissioner Ahmet,
Aye.
Commissioner Dunkel, aye. Motion passes. Thank you.
I'd like to thank city staff for all the work that you've put into this. Really, really appreciate this for us.
Um,
Can we take about a 5-minute break? Just kind of let everybody.
I would need a motion for that, right? Okay, we're gonna take a 5-minute break. We will come back at okay, now on the agenda is item 6B, public hearing, preliminary plat, city application number PS 21-003. Request for recommendation to city council for approval of a preliminary plat for the Roberson Pines subdivision located at 624 North Boyer Road. The site is legally described as Grand View Estates, Lot 1, Block B, located in a portion of the northwest quarter of the northeast quarter, Section 10, Township 57 North, Range 2 West, Boise Meridian, Bonner County, Idaho. A notice of public hearing was published in the Bonner County Daily Bee, the city's newspaper of record, on May 31st, 2022. The order and procedure previously stated applies to this public hearing as well. Before we proceed any further, I would like to ask for confirmation from each commissioner, please, that you have had no ex parte contact and have no conflict of interest as pertains to this request.
None.
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 And I have none. I will now yield the floor to City Planner Amy Tweeten for an introduction to this request and explanation of the application.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Roberson Pines is a proposed 5-lot subdivision on a 0.98 acre site in the RS Single Family Zoning District. The parcel was part of a previous plat with access to all lots via an easement rather than a public right-of-way. No new access points on North Boyer Road will be created with the subdivision. All utilities are in proximity to the site. The property is located within 300 feet of the Sandpoint Airport and within the inner critical zone as shown on the map. The proposed plat would create a public right-of-way through a purely local drive of 26 feet in width. A fire turnaround is provided between lots 4 and 5, and the street will be privately maintained. There is one existing structure that would remain, and all lots meet the RS single family size requirements. Based on staff review of the plat and code requirements, a motion to recommend approval of the Roberson Pines preliminary plat City Council should include the following conditions. The commission may incorporate additional conditions as well. A signed and notarized fair disclosure statement shall be recorded for all lots within the subdivision pertaining to the inner critical zone in accordance with Sandpoint City Code 912.5E. A note on the plat should be added referencing the fair disclosure statement. A road maintenance agreement shall be accepted by the city and referenced on the final plat for the public right-of-way and include provisions for snow removal and signage to preclude on-street parking. The final plat shall include a note prohibiting additional lot access onto North Boyer Road. A development agreement shall be provided to City Council for approval and recorded prior to issuance of a construction permit, providing terms and conditions required for public improvements. The right-of-way should be amend the right-of-way dedication note to omit city and to add privately maintained, and omit the note leader referencing the easement along the section that is publicly dedicated. After receiving public comment and deliberation, the commission may recommend to City Council that the Roberson Pines preliminary plat be approved with conditions, or denied.
Thank you. Do the commissioners have any questions for staff at this time? I have one. So the additional lot access to North Boyer, that's just so the lot that fronts Boyer has to use that driveway or the Roberson.
It will access Roberson Way, not Boyer.
Okay. That's all.
And if I read correctly, they're asking for 26 feet wide Roberson Way, correct? Not 60 feet. Is that going to pose a problem for fire, police, for
For
those
the purely
services?
local drive, and given the length of it,
Mm.
that is the purpose of the turnaround as shown between these two lots, so that it does provide sufficient space for the truck to come in, and then they have the ability to use that to turn around.
I was wondering what that was for. Okay,
Yeah.
I see that.
That's the fire access turnaround.
Okay, so that is sufficient enough for emergency services.
Correct. And there are conditions on the plat that it has to be it has to be maintained in the winter, and it can't be blocked because it is specifically for fire access.
Any other questions? Okay, hearing no more questions, I'll now yield the floor to the applicant's presentation. If the applicant's representative will please step to the podium and introduce yourself.
Yes, that's me. Hi, my name is Mike Hammock. Thank you for the time here tonight. I was supposed to have someone else here presenting this, and they called late this afternoon and couldn't make it. So I have nothing to show. I'm just here to answer any questions, do whatever I can to help the process. So.
Okay, anybody have any questions for Hammock?
I think I might have one.
Go
What
ahead.
is the purpose of leaving the structure that exists there already?
That it's there already, moving, it's a double wide. Once you move them, they're hard to refinance. It meets the setbacks within what's there. So I don't see a purpose in moving it. It would make the project a little more expensive, right? Because I got to move it. When you sell them for less money because they're considered moved, and when you do that, it devalues them. Yeah.
Okay.
If there's no more questions, then the hearing is now closed.
You're gonna open the hearing now. That was just
Oh,
the applicant.
Sorry.
You
Fast
were-
forwarding. Okay, public hearing is now open. We will now recognize those in the room who testify in favor, Madam Clerk.
Will Lula Osborne please come to the podium?
All right, thank you, commissioners, for hearing me out. I basically just have need some clarification on what's happening. This is my husband, Alan, and I'm Lula Osborne. We live at the very end of Roberson Drive, past Block B. And we were deeded a legal access of 30-foot right-of-way to get in and out to our home. And I just understood that it's going to be down to 26 feet. And if that's legal or not, I don't know. So I was wondering about that. Let's see here. Also, when they're building and putting in sidewalk and the street, how will that affect our ingress and egress? Is there going to be a proper way where we can get in and out without difficulty, like going? I had trouble in the past with them putting in New North Boyer, so I was kind of scolded. I had to get to work. So anyway, long story short, I wanted to know how that was going to happen. How can we get in and out without damaging vehicles or having to walk in and park somewhere else? And also our water line, when I was looking at the map, it looks like the street is going to be placed over our water line. It comes in off of North Boyer on the south side of the road right now. And if the street's going in there, what'll happen to our water line? I don't think it should be buried under the asphalt or whatever's going in there. And then it said the snow removal and maintenance will be taken care of by private parties. And who is that? Who takes care of that if it's not the city? Also, it's a public access. So do we provide a sign that says no, where I put that, dead end street? Or do I have to put up a sign that says no trespassing on our property? That's basically about what I had. I just needed some clarification on those items. Okay, thank you.
And Lula, for the record, could you please state your address?
Yes, it's 602 Roberson Way.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other? Doesn't look like anybody else here. What, anybody on Zoom who would like to testify in favor?
There are no attendees on Zoom who would like to testify in favor.
Nobody here neutral, I assume.
Nobody on Zoom is neutral.
Anybody in opposition on Zoom?
There is no one in opposition raising their hand on Zoom, Mr. Vice Chair. And for the
Amy-
record, there's
oh.
no one present who
Nobody. All right.
advise neutral or opposed.
Can you pull up site 1 for me, please?
Hold on.
Hold on.
We're still in our public hearing.
Oh, sorry.
Now who's fast forwarding?
I just can't see it well enough. So many questions.
So anybody who would, who has not had an opportunity to speak, wish to do so? Nobody? Okay, do commissioners have any additional questions at this time
For the applicant.
for the applicant? I have a couple questions.
For the applicant?
For the applicant, yes.
Okay.
So you'll have to wing it. Have you had any discussion with the neighboring property owners?
You know, I have not since we started down this path. I can answer some of the questions she had on there.
Okay. We could use this time as a rebuttal too, can't we?
He can use it for rebuttal, and just for the record, also, I've suggested that they contact Amy and Amanda at the city and set an appointment to come in and talk with them as well, and they're going to do that.
Okay, so this is a little unorthodox, isn't it, without a specific presentation? And so moving forward, we're just gonna
You
move
can
forward?
ask the applicant questions that you have.
Okay. So let's use this as a rebuttal period. So if you could address anything that's come up as far as other testimony.
Yeah, so the water lines, there's gonna be a new water line ran all the way down to the end of the paved part, to the end of the property I own now, and that'll be new water lines tied into your water lines there. As far as signage goes, I don't mind putting up any signs, you know, a dead end sign, it is a dead end road. I don't mind paying for that, putting up a dead end sign. You live at the end, there is another house there. I don't know how that works as far as putting up a no trespassing sign on their property. But if they want one on their property, they can, right? As far as you guys putting it up and putting it in, and because from their back, it's an easement. So I don't know how it works as far as putting a sign in that easement. The travel lane right now is about 12 foot wide of gravel. We are gonna have a wider asphalt than that, so that cars can go by each other on the asphalt. So on an asphalt driveway where it's not potholes and mud, cars can pass each other on it. And then there will also be a sidewalk that can be used there. The snow removal, I will probably, it will have to be something on the plat, right? Part of the agreement with us. There's gonna have to be a snow removal agreement. And I don't mind putting on there that the 5 lots I'm doing is required to do that. You guys will have nothing to do with it. And then from there back, you and the other neighbors will have to discuss that and figure that out. So I know right now there's brush all along the south side of that road. You know, at one point, I think it was you guys that called and asked about taken some of that out because it was scraping your car. So that brush will be, everything will be cleaned up. It'll be a better travel way. I don't know that you want neighbors. But it will be a better travel way. You will have a new water line all the way to the back there, to the back of my property.
Are you saying that the road will be wider east of your property line, that you're going to widen it on their property as well, or no?
No. But right now it's just a 12 foot
12
wide travel.
You're going to go to 26
Yeah, and so there's.
and you're going to
20
pave it.
Yep, it's going to be paved. The travel way is not 26. There is a ditch in there and it shows on the
Okay.
plans. But the travel way is wide enough for cars to go past each other. It's all good enough for the fire department, for them coming in and out, emergency vehicles. It's all been, I believe, ran by them and checked with them. So.
That sounds pretty
Trying
reasonable.
to do something nice, simple. So. I'm open to you guys telling me what to do.
Careful.
Do commissioners have any final questions for the applicant?
And you said there's going to be a sidewalk
Yes,
on both sides of
there will be a sidewalk on the north side.
north side. Okay.
Yeah.
There's no parking on this street, right? Or this road?
I don't believe there is. I think it's in the conditions, right?
Yeah, there should be no parking. It's like
Yeah.
26 feet.
Mm,
You have to be able to get a fire truck in.
Yeah.
And out.
And
Okay.
Yeah, and we have the turnaround in there to get them turned around and back out, so.
Okay, last chance for questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Public hearing is now closed. At this time, the commission will deliberate. No new information may be provided and questions may be directed only to city staff during deliberation. Do commissioners have questions for city staff?
I do.
Go ahead.
Amy, so this road that's there now, does the city maintain that for snow removal? No.
it's an easement.
It's oh, okay.
And those are currently it's currently non-conforming. This is an attempt to make it more conforming. You know, is it perfect? No, but does it take a step forward drastically?
It just doesn't change status. It's always going to be the easement.
No, it's going to be a publicly dedicated right
Oh.
of way as a, what do we call those? Purely local drive, privately maintained.
Okay, thank you.
It doesn't terminate the easement, so I want to
Yeah.
make sure that we address the one comment that we had. It doesn't terminate the easement, but it improves upon at least this application's purely local drive.
We don't know if this is a fact or not, but the 30-foot easement to the back property compared with a 26-foot wide driveway is this doesn't change their 30-foot easement.
No.
Because right now they still have 30, even though they pretty much only use 12, it sounds like. One question I have is that this is in this intercritical zone. And is that any kind of issue?
Unlike if this was a request to rezone property or a conditional use permit that have to be consistent with the comprehensive plan, this was zoned single-family residential before the airport chapter of the comp plan and the zoning ordinance were in place. And the condition of the notarize fair disclosure statements. Those are the conditions to ensure future owners know that they are in the intercritical zone.
The airport did comment in opposition. However, Ms. Tweetin's exactly correct in her explanation.
Thank you.
I'm prepared to make a motion, Mr. Vice Chair.
If there's no more questions for city staff, then I'd entertain a motion.
Mr. Vice Chair, if I may.
Yes, thank you.
I move the Planning and Zoning Commission, after consideration of the criteria and relevant standard of Idaho Code and Sandpoint City Code, recommend the Sandpoint City Council approve the request by Hammock Construction for the Roberson Pines 5-lot subdivision on parcel RPS 37700B0010A, located at 624 Roberson Way on the east side of North Boyer Road, approximately 600 feet south of Schweitzer Cutoff Road, subject to the following conditions. 1 through 7. And this is based on evidence, records, and testimony. The reasons for recommending approval are: number 1, staff has followed the notice procedures applicable to subdivisions contained in Sandpoint City Code, Title 9, Chapter 9. 2, based on information presented at the hearing and the placement of limitations through conditions, the application is in compliance with the subdivision and zoning requirements in Sandpoint City Code. 3, the proposed subdivision is consistent with overall planning goals and objectives.
Think you have a motion? Is there a second? I have a motion and second. We'll do a roll call vote. Commissioner Boyd,
Yes.
Commissioner Shook,
Yes.
Commissioner Camp,
Yes.
Commissioner Ahmet,
Yes.
Commissioner Dunkel, yes. Motion passes. At this time, with no further business for the commission, this meeting is now adjourned at 7:13.
I'm 1 for 3. Baseball player.